Are you feeling stressed out? Perhaps being plagued by day terrors, or even worse, night terrors? If anxiety, trepidation, stress, and fear are wearing you down, go ahead to guidedhypnotic.com. That's guidedhypnotic.com and download your free guided hypnotic meditation. That's guidedhypnotic.com. There you go. So
I love it. You got the voice for it too.
All right. Exactly. Here we go. Joseph Varghese, aka the Breakthrough Engineer, is a growth and profit strategist. He is also co-leader of the New York Power Team. He is passionate about empowering others to stay focused, driven, and living their highest potential. For 17 years, he's been immersed in the science of peak performance, productivity, and gamification. Joseph has become a thought leader in the area of peer accountability. Since 2005, Joseph has been facilitating Success Circles. So go ahead to successcircles.com, a peer momentum-based community for entrepreneurs and coaches. That is just the tip of the iceberg, my friend. True or true?
True or true. Yes, true indeed, my friend. So, awesome.
Thank you so much, for sharing your most valuable asset, your time and your wisdom and beyond. And also just to share some light on, kind of what's possible, how we're navigating these interesting times. And a little preface, I believe we've probably known each other for a good 20 years.
Close to it, I'd say, yeah. Through the New York Power Team, other communities, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're still plugging away, living the dream. So what's been going on? How are you? What are you passionate about these days? And we're going to talk about gamification and, how that has been a passion of yours. So where did it all begin?
Yeah, brother. So where do I start? I mean, these days I'm passionate about my family. My kids are like running upstairs back and forth with our new nanny. So you can hear that at times as well also. So just being a great dad like you are as well also, committed to that. My why, I often share that's generational leadership, kind of like impacting my kids and their kids. So they're top of my focus these days. And everything I do relates to that as well also, with regard to the things we do with the huddles and peer groups, success circles, all of that. Yeah, just living in New York, making the most of this time with family and creating more impact, more value in the world.
Well, and you've been doing the success circles. I recall, when I went on the road with Tony Robbins in late 06, 07. So you were already doing that back in the day of the Power Team, when I was deeply involved in the New York Power Team. So this has been going on for a long time. Years. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, what's interesting is that you talk about voice, and you've got this stellar way of communicating voice, like, all of that. I can see you're very passionate about that, and I see the great equipment you have there too as well. I'm passionate about voice too, in a different sense and in the same sense too as well. So when 9/11 hit, I stepped out of the corporate world. I was an engineer, and I went through this depression point, a period of time for many months. I had these CDs for Personal Power 2, Tony Robbins program, popped it in. I didn't even listen to the whole set, but there's one audio where he talks about where focus goes, energy flows. He talks about focusing on raising standards and wins, victories, things of that sort. I started journaling that. I still do. Part of Success Circles is about that. Now, I guess the commonality with you, where you're at, is that one day I went to see a pharmacist for my allergy medication. I had allergies at the time, I no longer do. And a woman next to me by the counter, she said something unique to me that stirred an idea. She basically said that you've got this unique voice, and you've got a gift, and it would be a shame to your creator if you left that on the table. You didn't use that to really make a difference in the world. Something of that sort. And I was just like in awe that someone would communicate to me that way, a complete stranger. And it initiated this idea. So I went to study voice for a number of years. A Linklater approach, Kristen Linklater. I worked with some of the top voice teachers in the world in New York. A voiceover coach in Merrick, Long Island. I used to go out there for a bit. Improv, 3 years of improv, completely changed my life from being a very left brain engineer. But I say that because fast forward 2005 at a Tony Robbins event, Day with Destiny. I declared a purpose, a mission statement that I still live these days. It meant something different to me back then. It was about inspiring others to find their own God-given voice. Very similar to the feedback she had given me, this woman. I didn't know what it meant fully, but I was inspired by it. And then one day, maybe 2 weeks after that event, I'm walking through 34th Street by Penn Station, and there's like this guy, and he's got a whole table full of incense and a few books here and there. And one book stood out, one personal development book, and that book that he had on the table was The Eighth Habit by Stephen Covey. Right? I think I have it here on my desk over here somewhere on this side. And The Eighth Habit, as you open it up, it's to inspire others to find their voice as leaders. So much everything I've been doing for the past 15 years has been honoring that mission. That's been my filter through life, leading the power team, success circles, being very actively involved with Bass Brigade, many other endeavors too as well. Also, it's just inspiring leadership. And so that's what I do. That's how I see voice these days. It's changed my life.
So were you doing voiceovers and that, because you do have a very smooth voice. Is that something that you were doing for a period of time, or do you still do that? Is that something that you enjoy?
I did it for friends, for phone systems, websites, things of that sort. I've got the domain, thevoiceman.com.
Yeah, there you go.
However, what I realized, and I spoke to Abrams, which is one of the top companies at the time. They're like, you've got to do more work around this, really master the skill set. And it just became clear to me that I'm not an actor. I studied improv for 3 years, and the top professionals in this space happen to be performers, actors.
Right.
And so I gave it up. I gave it up around my 2006 or so.
And so it's actually a really sort of powerful statement you just made. And that awareness of something that you realize that maybe for whatever reason, like, could you become an actor? Could you put the work in and all of that? Yes, obviously everyone can do that. How did you feel about like changing and pivoting at that moment? Because that, I'm sure you had a lot of people, you had a passion to a degree, to then kind of step back and go, maybe I'm better suited to put my energy elsewhere. Did you feel a sense of loss? Was that a challenge for you? Because, and then we're going to bounce around timelines during this conversation. Like right now, people are pivoting and losing gigs and losing dreams and all sorts of things. And what do you do with that? And you consciously did it. So how did you do that? Is there maybe a moment that you realized, or what was their process that you were able to come to that conclusion?
A lot of it was proximity. So great point. How did the pivots happen? So the proximity at that point, post Day with Destiny, that event, the people around me were leaders. We're all clear about our purpose and our values. So it was building a structure around that. Prior to that happening, my peer group for a long time were actors, were performers, studying improv, being on stage, taking classes together. I did a class a few months ago. It was a musical theater improv class.
Are you still doing it?
Well, someone gifted it to me, so I do it. I love it. It changed. It was the best thing I've ever done. Like in February, I did it this year for a whole week, immersed. And every day I sing and dance with my kids. My daughter, pick her up. I sing to her, You're My Sunshine, and we just do this musical together. But that came about out of musical theater improv, and I've always loved musical theater, and stories about them with my early days with my wife. And it's time where they created a whole musical theater show based on my life and my experience meeting Mayor Koch as a kid. That's a whole other story. To answer your question, it is about proximity. So it was around people, actors, and to be honest, at the time when I was in that world, I kind of, even though I was successful as an engineer, as a consultant up until about 2001, making a lot, when I became an actor, I was around people who had more of a scarcity mindset, I'd say. Right? And not everyone. I mean, I was in a relationship with someone for a while, and she did not. But a lot of those people did, and I realized that was affecting my own psyche too as well. And it was more of a 2000. My dad passed away in 2004. And then when he passed away, I made strides to sell my home in Jersey, to move to Queens to be around my mom in Bayside, Queens. And it just became very clear to me that I had to create a whole new peer group. from where I was at. I no longer had easy access to go to Manhattan, getting on train, take acting classes. The power team became my family. And fortunately, this idea post Date with Destiny around creating a peer group accountability structure came to me based on something I was doing before. And that over the years, it just led to success circles. And playing with the compound effect, really taking on some of the engineering ideas, Kaizen principle, making it better and better each day. It just took a life on itself. And there's more to it, like meeting Michael Gerber and working with Jay Abraham and other extraordinary leaders that helped guide me along the way. But that's kind of a summary of where things were with voice and the pivots there. And to answer your question too, like I've had about 8 career pivots. And I think it's important to be able to be flexible and be able to embrace the pivot. So one of my mentors, Joel Roberts, encouraged me years ago to write a book about the pivot, reinventing oneself. And that's something that I will do at some point in the future. There's a strategy around it. It's about, and there are books about this topic too. Part of it is proximity, who you're around. Part of it also is what resources you have in front of you, around you. Another part of it is identity, like how we identify ourselves. Like at some point in the past, I was the voice man. I've got that domain. I'm not attached to it anymore. I've got other identities. The breakthrough engineer is one of those new identities that I have so far right now. And it's being flexible. Like I've started several ventures. When I did the forum back in 2003, I started a event company called Metrofly. A club in New York called Centrofly closed. So I'm like, well, that's a great name. Let's go with Metrofly. And we threw parties, fundraisers for 2 years. I'd never done them before. And just learned skills around email marketing, joint ventures, connecting charities with people. And it's going after, one thing I love from improv, and I talked about this earlier with a client of mine, is this whole idea of follow the fear. And it's one of the top improv teachers in the whole world, like has a, like says that. That's one of his taglines, and it's plastered on the wall at the Pitt Theater in New York. And it's really being on your edge, like really being bold, and the willingness to surround oneself with people who are playing that level of extraordinary game, because we become who we're around. Right. So that's been my journey so far. It's being one level of being uncomfortable to another level of being uncomfortable, and noticing what happens internally and making the shifts to kind of honor that expansion.
Well, and that's so important, the proximity. I mean, my whole career pivot and change from music into personal development was a direct result of the Power Team. Because I joined, my first event ever was Unleash the Power Within in, I don't know, 03, 04, something like that. And I was blown away. It's like, I had no idea that there were events like this. It was like a rock concert, right? And then I was like, oh, I got turned on. I was like, I started looking for more.
Right.
And then my next event that I went to was like an MMI. And I'm sitting in the MMI by myself. I went there on my own. And I think it was Carson Daly and Laura and a couple of the, old school, power teamers. I don't even
Carson Tang, yeah.
Carson Tang. Tang. Sorry.
Carson's still good. He's a good friend of mine. We do hikes. All good.
Yeah.
All good.
I was going to say Carson Daly. I saw last night. I was flipping the channels, and Josie and the Pussycats was on the movie, and Carson Daly did
of course. It's all focus. So a big theme of this, I'll invite people at some point, is the power of focus and like top of mind, path of least resistance. We'll go into that very soon. But back to you, the MMI, the experience. Carson was there.
So I'm sitting down. I don't know if you were there or not. I don't know if you remember this. And they were all talking about the UPW, and I was like, oh wow, I was there. That was great. And they're like, oh yeah, come join the Power Team. I'm like, what's that? Like, well, we get together once a month and we just resource share, and, it's like camaraderie, and we just keep keep this energy moving forward. I'm like, there's people who get together on purpose. I'm there. So I went there, and at that time, I think,
it was a Ross Lagamina, and then Carson.
It was Ross. Sorry, I drew a blank. I just saw him a couple of months ago. He was looking to become, he was doing a demo. The first night I went, he was recording a demo to become a facilitator for Tony for, I guess, the digital events.
Yes.
So I was talking, we're doing that. And then Manny Goldman He and I became friends. He moved to California, became friends with Jarek, and then reached out to us and we're like, hey guys, Tony's looking for LSRs for that gig. And I was at the bottom of my stuff going on, and music was dead for me at that moment, and I had to just reinvent. And I, without getting into the whole story and how I got the job, I ended up getting the gig, and actually was my first digital event that I sold for Tony was Ross facilitating.
Wow, got it.
So cool closed loop. But the point being is edifying the power of proximity and putting yourself in an environment that creates not only conscious accountability, but other than conscious accountability. Because when you're surrounded by people playing a certain level, we just naturally start to elevate our game to stay in that, all boats rise and fall with the tide.
Exactly. And you rise the expectations. They expect it to be bigger and better and bolder, and particularly how you present yourself in the moment. Mm-hmm. And we just do what we can to kind of honor that agreement that's there, that they expect it to be bold and extraordinary and, beyond, right? And that's the whole nature of it. It's great. It's brilliant.
Well, and the great thing about the power team in particular, and I think, about Tony Robbins, people who have in that personal development and have Tony in their world, they're relatively agnostic in where they get their information from, meaning they're not like it's Tony or nothing. Like, you went to forum, I went to forum, we brought in other speakers to the power team. Like, it was never about it had to be Tony's way or no way. Which is powerful, because there are some groups who get kind of myopic on the teacher instead of looking at the principles and going, hey, what are some other ways we can create some more breakthroughs and learnings and expansion?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they're all universal principles, and Tony's great at packaging it. And even Stephen Covey, I mentioned Eighth Habit, that book came, I was a fan of Stephen Covey. That idea came, going to Date with Destiny was an extraordinary event, and then tapping to that book as a resource and making my prime purpose that, just connecting ideas together. And it's there's so many paths, and all these universal truths come together. And I think the cornerstone of all of it is focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. That idea. Napoleon Hill talks about that. It's age-old principle. The Bible, the Torah talks about it. And it's just continually willing to hack our focus and keep the important things top of mind, and take the small micro actions, that 1% of actions each day toward meeting that. Right. That's the way I see it.
So when you started the Success Circles back then, and after going to Date and you got all fired up about it, what was that journey like? How did you get that up and running? And what were some of the challenges that you may have had back then? And are they similar or different today?
Different challenges back then. Now we're focused on scaling. I think the journey around Success Group before was called the Embrace Group, and it was this fun thing I was doing. It was a hobby, and every 2 weeks I'd pair people together as buddies. I put together these questions I put on the website, and people would get on a call and share their answers to these questions. Kind of like going back to 2001 when I went through this depression and started focusing on these questions, raising standards, contributions. It shifted my state. So we got to kind of get in dialogue about these things each day, one-on-one, on a buddy call, on a daily huddle. And I didn't call it a daily huddle back then. The word huddle came years later when I met maybe with Keith Ferrazzi. I think I had lunch with him through Larry Benet, our Manny Goldman and I have a common with Larry Benet. Yeah. You probably know Larry as well. Also, Larry's also from New York as well. And so the Embrace Group basically evolved into Success Circles. And Michael Gerber, I went to an event with him in San Diego in 2007. And I came to that event called the Dreaming Room with an idea. That idea was about building a process consulting company called Process to Profit. And it just made sense because I had a process engineering background. I wanted to help entrepreneurs succeed and thrive and streamline the business's operations. And he had me on stage for about 30, 40 minutes. And he's like looking at what I presented to him. And he's like, well, there's no passion here. I don't see this pulling at your heartstrings. Like, you can, the seat you've got right now on stage with me, people pay thousands of dollars to have these moments. What else you got? And I told them, well, I have this group called the Embrace Group, and it's really, I get a lot, I'm inspired by it. There are multiple huddles happening each day. We found a way to measure progress. Most of my members are entrepreneurs or coaches. And he's like, well, tell me more. And I drew it out, I mapped it out, talked about it. He's like, that's it. And so that was kind of a wake up point around Success Circles. And I started branding in Success Circles. Now, 2 years goes by, and it's 2009 now. And our friend Carson has an event upstate, Power Mastery event. You might have been at that event too. Jarek was there too.
I wasn't at that one, but I've spoken at it since we spoke at a couple of years ago. It's great. Awesome. Fantastic event. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had this event, maybe one of his first variations of this, on his own doing Power Mastery. And at this event, there was a very vibrant woman. She's 26 years old with her mom. Top of the world, charismatic. She just finished UPW, like passionate, jumping out of planes, like firefighter, volunteer firefighter, doing all these extraordinary things. I was in and out of that event. I was in a relationship, and we weren't in that event full time. We're just hanging out, visiting, and I had it in my mind. I bought these flyers at that event to talk about Success Circles, giving people like a month of access to this program. We'd already affected maybe 50, 60 people at that point, as far as members, people referring people in our community. But I hadn't done the full work toward branding it further, like being able to make it into a billable business. So what happened at this event, which basically changed the course of everything, 3 days after this event, this woman, Emily Selvage, is her name, and her mom, Sheila, she took her life. She locked herself into a house. She took her life. And it occurred to me that if I had taken on the opportunity to talk to Carson ahead of time about presenting at this event and talking about this idea of a huddle, like no longer being isolated, being connected, sharing gratitude, sharing your why, it occurred to me that if I had shared that and given everyone that opportunity, including her, that wouldn't have happened. So it's no accident, later that month, same month of June 2009, Ross had a power team meeting. It was like a circle of people, maybe 8 of us. It's no accident that one of the people in that circle, Eric Goldstein, became my first paying member of Success Circles. Because in those 2 weeks, I'd done the work to building those systems toward building a model that was scalable, taking the advice that Michael Gerber gave me 2 years before. It took the pain of losing someone who, that I could have potentially given value to. And I've over the years, I've done work around this to release a lot of those thoughts, and it's not my fault and so forth. I realized that we find oftentimes that pain is the big motivator. And it took that pain and other points in my life of pain experiences to cause a lot of change in my life, right? So Eric was my first paying member. Second member was Ellen Reach. She passed away last week. I got to honor her, created a blog post about her also, rulesforsuccess.com. I created a whole, she passed away. She was extraordinary. She taught me quite a bit too about, work ethic. And then Eric invited his best friend, Paul Frisano, and then it just started growing and compounding, and community grew quite a bit since then. But it took that. So it took a lot of pain to maybe be able to really move it forward. And there are other pieces and people that were there too. And I could talk about my childhood. My parents come to this country back in the 60s. My mom was a RN nurse, and she and her friends bought a house in Canada. My dad came to this country. And in our house in Elmhurst, Queens, over the course of 20 years, we had many of my dad's brothers and siblings and cousins living in our house for 6 months at a time. And I got to see my dad crowdsource their dreams. So it's a combination of all of these things coming together that I believe helped me build all of this. And we've launched masterminds since then, 5 years ago. I can go into that too as well. The whole idea with this, Doug, is that idea around gamification, like life is a game. Right. If you see life as being a game, today being a game, yesterday being a game, this quarter, these 90 days as being a game, there's less attachment. You just basically show up, you play hard, you start the day with a huddle, you review your day, and tomorrow, you know what? It's a new game. You're not attached to the breakdowns the day before. You have lessons that are there. We just built a whole framework to help people reflect on these lessons, get course correcting feedback by someone who's a step or two ahead of you, someone in the same playing field as you, hence the whole game metaphor, where we're all in the same playing field, throwing a ball or kicking a ball or, with one another. We evolved our community to embrace a lot of these ideas just around game theory, making life fun, making accountability fun. And, and I believe also at the heart of it, saving lives. I believe a lot of our people and members over the years, they've had that compelling feature, their why, alive for them every day. Going back to RPM, Tony's program, Rapid Planning Method, like having that why in front of you, where you pull into action each day, because it's there, it's in dialogue. You're not in monologue. You can monologue, you're in your head overthinking things over and over and over again. And people have a thought, and that thought can be a dangerous thought if they overthink that thought. Yep. Versus someone who is focused on possibility, growth, their why, being heard every day, being connected, like sharing their voice each day. There's a lot of opportunity there. That's what I live for.
Love it. And so I'm sure the timing couldn't have been better for a lot of people in the last few months, because right now, as we date this conversation, we're still in the middle of COVID and so forth. What impact did all of this wackiness have on you, on the growth of the business, on the way you were communicating with people? Because I'm sure that you got a lot of opportunities to hear some other challenges as well. And I'm hallucinating, it probably inspired you to do even more to help others. But did this have any impact on how you were doing your business, how you were growing it, how you were impacting people?
It did. I mean, we brought on board a number of big players. People are making 6-7 figures, platinum partners in our community, and I had to face them. So I would buddy up with them at some points. Like Ken Van Loo, a buddy of mine, built skyscrapers in New York. I interviewed him a few weeks ago. Being in dialogue with someone who's playing a big game, making 7 figures, just transforming lives, whether it's Ken or the multitude of other people, it pushed me to play, like just evolve what I'm doing, to really show up powerfully and to, level up the other ventures I have too as well. That's part of it. Knowing also as a community, we're contributing to others too. So there are points where a member was going through something, we help them with that challenge, what they're dealing with, whether it be cancer or something different that often came up. You see, my best friend Darren in the community 14 years ago, beginning to reinvent himself and being paired up with another member, Callie, in Long Island, who's a teacher, and him finding his purpose. He became a teacher out of that. Before that, he was doing sales. He just, out of his buddy calls, he's like, you know what, I like that too as well. And he made a pivot like quickly, and he got his master's, and he's back in success circles now. Seeing many other people make those pivots too. Over a short time, we had a recruiter in Canada who joined about a month and a half ago, and she had left recruiting, and we paired up with Ruth, who's another kick-ass recruiter, business leader, who moved to Bali for 3 years, who came back to be with her family during COVID. And this recruiter, she pivoted again, just talking to this having a huddle each day, talking to Ruth. And I think you did the Wisdom course years ago. Am I correct? Did you ever do the Wisdom course?
No.
So an idea of the Wisdom course, the core principle of the Wisdom course is very simple. The conversations disappear. Mm-hmm. So we have dreams, we have aspirations, we have our why. And without having some way to put these things into existence, speaking them out loud in dialogue, it just falls by the wayside.
Right.
So it's about putting those things in front of you. And there is an opportunity with what we do around pivoting each day, making those small course corrections each day. One of the reasons why I have this giant compass behind me, that idea of making 1% improvement, but that comes forward by like getting like clear laser feedback. And you can do it with a coach, like, you're a coach, and a lot of members of our community success circles, half members are coaches. Coaching, we find coaching calls are weeks apart, sometimes every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So what happens between that? So we provide the glue around that, giving people the ability to course correct on a daily basis. I was fortunate 2 years ago, I worked with the top coach in the Tony company, Michael Nitti, mm-hmm. who's my coach for 6-9 months. And he helped me kind of design this process. He introduced me to David Allen, who wrote the book called Getting Things Done. I worked with David for a bit of time too. So we basically integrated a lot of these technologies into our process, and giving people a way to get congruent each day, to make pivots, develop greater confidence. as you can imagine, when you start winning and you share those wins on a daily basis, those wins start stacking, and how we see ourselves start shifting too. So a lot of things have come out of this process that evolved quite a bit over the years, and it's allowing myself to evolve because I'm the biggest guinea pig in this whole process. I personally had 120 different accounting partners, momentum buddies over the course of 15 years. Yeah, and it's being open and coachable. It's a big thing.
So as as I geek out a little bit with you on this, how do you pick the accountability partners? Is there a time frame at that? Are there KPIs within that? Like, it's just so interesting how you're doing this. I love it. I mean, it's brilliant. I have a similar, group of people that I hang with. It's not a paid thing. It's just, we have this mastermind that we're just voluntarily, it's just 6 of us that just do it. But I love, how you're scaling it and you're taking it to another level, and it's vital, so important. But how do you decide who gets to go with who and for how long, and what's the format, the format?
Yeah, it's a great question. So every 2 weeks we do the pairings. We sit down for 6 to 8 hours, myself, my team, looking at people, their challenges or personalities. When people sign up, they write down specifics on their personality, we have 16personalities.com, I think is the site we use. And it's based on a number of factors. The language they speak from the growth work, whether they've done Landmark, Tony Robbins, Strategic Coach. We've had a member this past Saturday join from Strategic Coach, that organization. I find that in these frameworks we're part of, there's often a certain language, and certain words mean something different across different communities. Significance in Landmark means something different from significance in Tony Robbins' world, for example. So it's matching the language, looking also the time availability that people are able to connect. So for me, my calls have to be ideally before 8 in the morning. Previously to COVID, they had to be before 7, so between 5 and 7. A lot of our members prefer to have calls between 8 and 9. It's like a 20 minutes, a half-hour huddle. We push out the questions each day. We use a certain app for that. We push out the questions. So you can choose from these questions, or they can expand on other optional questions too. The cornerstone question that's there that we embrace is basically the Kaizen principle, or the constant never-ending improvement. And that question is simply this: if you had to relive yesterday over again in an alternate reality or a parallel universe, what's one thing you would have done differently to have had a better day? That one question, we introduced that question maybe about maybe 8, 9 years ago. Prior to that, it was like, how'd you raise your standards? Which is a great question too. But that the Kaizen question, 1% improvement, reliving, it has you kind of rethink things, reevaluate your day. What's one choice I could have made yesterday with regard to sleep, or with regard to maybe family, with regard to a business opportunity? And eventually over time, you learn those lessons stack up. You start learning, and we help you track it. So we have a survey that goes out on Fridays. So your buddy rates you in your passion, on how accountable you were, and really showing up, honoring your word. You also rate your buddy too. It's kind of like a dating relationship of sorts, but of course it's accountability. We call it momentum. We took out the word accountability some years back because we find momentum's more fun. We're focusing on the end result. Like I could be the accountability engineer, but I'm the breakthrough engineer. It's more empowering because it really speaks out the benefits.
Well, and accountability sounds to some like negative, whereas momentum, you're focusing on what you want. Accountability, it's like, oh, you're going to call me out on the things I didn't do? Come on, that doesn't sound fun.
Exactly. There's more flow and inspiration and momentum versus accountability is kind of staccato of sorts. It's like, I don't want people. So it's just inspiring. We just figured out a model where you're inspired by your why. You declare it, pulls at your heartstrings each day, kind of like RPM.
Yep.
You're inspired to take those actions. It's in front of you, and ideally you maximize your morning. Stephen Pressfield talks about this too, The War of Art, and there's other books too, that resistance builds up as we get into our day. So if you can maximize your morning, like do some things, the things that scare you, kind of follow the fear early in your day, the day just flows afterward. And you've got these references that start stacking up, and eventually who you see yourself to be, how you identify yourself starts shifting. And then, and it didn't work out so perfectly. You get a new buddy, right? So like I'm budding with a guy, John, and he runs a startup in New York City, super successful guy. We budded a month ago. And between the last time he and I budded together in the past 4 weeks, I've reshifted much everything I do. And and he's like, wow, you've done all of these things in the process of the past few weeks. And it's like you have these breakthroughs and these distinctions and you apply them, and it's a compound effect. So the idea of making 1% progress each day, James Clear talks about this over the course of a year. It's like 37 times the level of progress.
Right.
I'm the biggest guinea pig in that. And I also get to see other people scale their lives, their businesses too, as well, also via our process. It works pretty well.
And how are you marketing it? How are you getting this opportunity to others?
So successcircles.com, I'm running ads. We're starting to run ads. For the longest time, it was referral based. So most of our community, one of our members, David Rush, he referred 5 people. His sister, his girlfriend, Victoria, joined. This woman, Mary Beth, had a call with on a couple of days ago. She joined. We went to college together, of all things. So it's been referral based for a long time. And now we're actually taking the steps toward growing it further. Especially during COVID, we've grown by 30%, maybe more over the past several weeks.
That's great.
Understandably, because of virtual accountability support structures and so forth. Yeah.
So I remember when you started back in the day, you were doing obviously like freeconferencecall.com or one of those technologies. How have you shifted? I heard you say app. I heard you obviously, there's daily and then monthly, weekly, biweekly stuff. How do you allow technology to become part of your cornerstones?
So I think people still prefer talking on the phone. So most of our interactions are on the phone, directly, as far as the huddles go. Videos are great. I had actually interviewed someone earlier this week, and she made a point that sometimes videos can be very distracting. So you wake up in the morning and trying to look good and press and all of that. And I know it's probably not happening here at all. You and I have done the work around that. But sometimes it's like you overthink things, getting on video versus getting on a phone call. So the huddles happen on the phone. We have a group Zoom call, momentumhuddle.com. We started doing this 9 weeks ago. And it's a 20-minute event we do every day where everyone has the opportunity for 2 minutes sharing their wins, their accomplishments from Q1 of the morning, setting their intention for the day, and grounding in gratitude at the end of the call, and also like a zone action, something that scares them. Something by declaring it publicly in our small group. It's not recorded. We've been doing that 8 weeks ago. So that's something we added in the mix to this kind of group huddle. That's on Zoom. Mm-hmm. Then on Saturday, we use Uber Conference. It's a conference software. It's kind of like a free conference call. We just find it to be more impactful, useful. People have a choice of being on video on that call, or they can just simply be on phone. And it works really well. It's very simplistic. It's one number they dial, the 646 number to tap into. If anyone's interested, if you go to momentum.buzz, it'll forward you to a link to participate on the Saturday call. We've been doing that call for 15 years, every week, nonstop, 15 years, reflecting on our wins, sharing our theme for the next week. It's just one small thing we do. And some of the calls we do, people come and get a taste of how Success Circles works. They get to.
So those are free resources for people.
They're free resources, exactly, precisely. They're available, and they've helped a lot of people, and it's great. And it's just simply a matter of reconditioning how we think, really focusing on like our reticular system, focusing on wins, accomplishments. Most people are scattered. Most people are like, what do I do now? I'm stuck, and it's like you give them a taste of what's possible when you start focusing on building momentum, really sharing your wins, and you can make it a muscle each and every day. Muscles get stronger over time.
Well, and basically you're taking the original concept in many respects of the power team and then spreading it out so that the engagement lasts that much longer, as opposed to just once a month where get together for a couple hours and, share a few things and then off you go.
Exactly.
And it's funny, the power team was born out of this answers basically the next need, because power team started because people would go to an event and be like on fire, and then a week or two later their momentum is gone because of just the environment that they're in. So they're like, let's get together power team once a month, we'll keep that momentum. And then even that, people could find themselves feeling good for the night. A couple days later, then start backing off. And I love it. The daily huddles is just keeping it less effort to keep the plate spinning at high velocity, as opposed to once a month trying to get it going really fast.
Exactly. And buddies, we often connect in the daytime. I'll send my buddy a resource throughout the day, or mention some feedback. So we have an app for that too. We send like a little video thing, takes a few seconds. just to keep, it's about keeping the conversation alive, keeping the things that matter alive each day. And I went to a nutrition school years ago, and like this idea of, could one conversation change your life? Gonna have this pin next to me at times.
There you go.
And I apologize. I think the door upstairs to the basement got opened at some point, so you can hear my kids in the background. I might have to message my wife to close the door momentarily. my wife's a physician. She sees patients. She's an endocrinologist, and we just figured out a way for her to work at home. So she works behind me at times, so you might see her going back and forth.
Yeah, no, we did. It's all good. So you shared Date with Destiny. Was that your first personal development event? Like, what was your intro into that world? Because it sounds like, from an engineer's perspective and so forth, that may not have been top of mind.
So great question. So I don't often share about the specifics around this, but I will, because this is real raw, right, with Doug. So I was stuck back in 2001, and I downloaded this audio off the internet called Irresistible Voice by Jonathan Alfeld. And I was on a news group one day on Alta Hypnosis. Someone posted about an event happening in New York. I'd never gone to a growth event before. And this is around 2002. And here I was kind of stuttering, not really knowing how to like communicate so well. And I attended this event. It was run by this community called Sleepwalkers. And at this event, I met with someone who became one of my closest friends, Marco Cepeda. And it so happened that Marco also was involved with this dating community in New York. So I got very actively involved with this dating community because I was also an area of my life that was missing at that point, that I didn't know. I really hadn't really experienced a lot, 27, 28 years old, not really knowing how to communicate with women. And in the process of all of that, studying improv and voice, being immersed in that world for 3 years, and having, fortunately, the resources for that, I actually refinanced my home to be able to do all of that. I just experienced monumental growth, like extraordinary growth. So Jonathan Alfeld, that event was my first event, meeting him, and that just led me down this pathway. Actually, I took a course with Doug O'Brien, 2002, Sleight of Mouth. He offered way back to that Sleepwalkers community. Like all these crazy things started happening. And it's just like, the more courageous I became along that journey, the more opportunities came my way. And even in 2002, I had an opportunity. I've never shared about this public before. While in this hypnosis community, Sleepwalker, someone posted about this opportunity of getting on the Ricky Lake show. And the topic was a hypnosis for lovers. And Marshall, the guy's name was Silver, not Marshall Silver, but another Silver. Tom Silver was his name. And I can't believe I'm sharing this. But, it's real raw. It's a context of like who you are, Doug, and you're kind of inviting that. I've never shared this public before. So in 2002 on the Ricky Lake show, I had the opportunity with a few other gentlemen to get on stage and do the full Monty on television, being hypnotized by Tom Silver, right? And I don't think I was fully hypnotized. In the moment, I just saw it as a bold opportunity to break through what I was dealing with in the past.
Yeah.
Having a lot of fear, being someone who stuttered, being very left brain. And it's that and and that was national television. Family and friends were like, were you on TV? Was that you? Like getting naked on TV, getting out your boxers? I'm like, no, it wasn't me at all. It didn't happen. You're someone who looks like me.
You hypnotized them.
Exactly. Hypnotize them, right? It's that and stacking other experiences, bold choices over the years, like doing crazy things that really pushed me to like really grow beyond myself, right? Like, and a lot of that is peer group. A lot of it is just like building these references, these success points that I no longer identify myself as that scared engineer that I used to be. So I don't know if I answered your question. Like I feel like I went on a little.
Yeah, Jonathan Alfield doing some events. I was curious, like, what was your first entree into the personal development beyond just like some tapes or that kind of thing, like your event that really, because that's usually what kicks people off. They listen to some tapes, and I listened to tapes for years, and my success in the music industry was in large part due to just personal power, just listening to that 30-day program on cassette. I'll date myself. But for me, the huge growth happened after attending an event and like in essentially infiltrating the environment, right?
Yes.
Where then I realized, oh my gosh, like there's other people like me. I don't feel as much of an outcast anymore because here's a bunch of other people who are asking some of the same questions and wanting to improve themselves and seeking methods by which to do so without judgment, like just trying weird stuff on, going on, Ricky Lake and, like stuff like that the average person doesn't do.
Right. I agree.
And
Immersion provides that. Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do want to acknowledge you because one of the things that we've seen in the personal development world as well is there's kind of two schools, we'll say, and it's been my experience, is you've got those who apply, they take that information and they continue to apply and then grow. And then there are some, like normal, like this isn't about anything other than just us being people, that seem to become like the personal development junkies who
just
they go and feel good, and then they go back and then to their old world, and they go and feel good for a little bit. They get a little shot in the arm, and then they come back, and it's like a yo-yo diet.
Yeah.
And what you're providing through Success Circles, I think, is extraordinarily powerful for those who might be on a yo-yo diet because it gives them the opportunity to stay focused. We see this in all walks of life, though, like networking. Do you do a lot of networking? Like
not as much as I used to. I'm really focused these days on partnerships, joint ventures.
Right.
I was trained by Jay Abraham years ago, so I used to attend a lot of events. I no longer do, and unfortunately, the place going the serial networkers, and then the people who would exactly. and then do the joint venture partnership. They would take the action, and they would use networking as a vehicle to meet partners, where others, sometimes you just see them at every networking event and you're like, hey, let's get together next week. And you're like, oh yeah. And then crickets. Yep. Exactly, my friend. Yeah. You see people like in this process where there's networking or going to growth events, 6 months goes by, and it's the same. Like nothing's shifted. Like nothing's been stirred. Nothing's progressed. And in some cases, 10 years goes by. Mm-hmm. And I've seen other people, to even family members too, as well. People like I grew up with. And, it takes a good, healthy kick in the butt, like however form that is. Some people it might be 12-step. It might be some sort of other accountability meeting of sorts, a men's group, perhaps, to wake people up to what's possible. But I think it's about being real and raw, and like that idea of that, and like having a community of people where you can be authentic and really show up powerfully, where they expect to be better. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do with Success Circles. To answer your question, like what was my growth event? It was the forum. I did that. Mm-hmm. I took an improv class. A friend of mine in my improv class, very successful physician, Evan Berger's his name. We're still good friends. He was in that class. He really stood out in that class. And like in terms of like all these other people were actors in this community. This is in 2003, and we hung out. And he started this company called A-List Entertainment, like this party company, multiple businesses. And I asked, like, what brought you to success? What have you done? He's like, the forum, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do the forum. And now, I don't think he knew about this, but I already been signed up for the forum for 5 months. Before that, I kept calling the company because I read some stuff online about all this stuff about their history, and I kept canceling. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm sick this month. I can't do it. Like something else came up. Can I get a refund? They're like, no, we can forward you. So instead of canceling it, I did it. This is like October 2003. Sophie. Sophie. It's Sophie. And I interviewed her on my room. I still have her voice in my head, her French accent.
Stingy.
Exactly. She's a trooper. She's amazing. She has she's booked now on Audible. You can hear her voice too. She was my forum instructor, and I interviewed her at the start of COVID a couple months ago, rulesforsuccess.com. It's an awesome interview. She's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, connect me. I'd love to interview her as well. So,
yeah. I will. Yeah, she's fantastic. So I had her, and after the forum, I started, my buddy Marco, I mentioned before, he enrolled me in an idea of, well, your friend Evan's doing these events. Could we do something similar? So we started Metrofly afterwards the next month. So it happened that I did my first Tony Robbins event too the next month. So not only did I complete the forum where I got the experience of nothing, right? Like the idea of like life is empty, meaningless, the past doesn't matter. I had this like free slate to kind of reinvent myself. But then I had this fire from doing Tony Robbins event. So I went full,
right after that?
UPW right next month. Yeah. So I went like balls to the wall, like unstoppable. Like I was in the bottom of Penn Station, like the staircase, just giving out flyers for our first event, for first Metrofly event. I just had a lot of fuel in me. It's like a lot of excitement, wanting to break out. And I also figured out I was an extrovert. I didn't know that before when I ran the marathon. So I won the lottery for the marathon the previous year. That's what got me out of this slump. Before I met Jonathan, that first event, I was training for the marathon because I won the lottery for it in 2002. So the idea of physiology.
Were you a runner or?
It wasn't much. I ran track in high school, cross country, and I had a heart condition, which I no longer have. So I had to like eliminate that when I was in high school. I couldn't do that as much. Right. And at this stage, 2002, my heart was healing. My mom had a heart transplant too before. I'm sharing a lot of backstory and things of that sort. I don't want to, our listeners who are watching, I don't want to confuse you and all of that. There's a lot of things have gone, all of us on this journey. There's these moments of pain and challenges and experiences and breakdowns and relationships going kaput and all of that. And they all add up. They all come together. Like Steve Jobs talks about, like all those dots connect. Yep. So I just had a lot of fire in me from realizing that I just had this potential, and people around me, the power team community, playing a big game I was connected with ongoingly, going to Manhattan. Around that same time, I found the power team too as well. And it's been extraordinary. I mean, I'm grateful for this whole journey. It's been really, really extraordinary.
Amen. And I would say one of the instructive lessons here that you have been able to do, and you've brought it up a number of times, is taking that pain and transmuting that into purpose, as opposed to, looking at it as the pain and the woe is me. And it's the rise from the ashes of victim to victor, where a thing happens, right? And to quote, the forum, everything is empty and meaningless, and it's empty and meaningless, and it's empty and meaningless. So now what? So COVID comes, we have a choice. We could make it the worst thing ever and go, woe is me, and, arg, 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 and F everybody. Or we could look at it as an opportunity to go, well, what can we do with this opportunity? What meaning could we give this? And what could be something of even more value? And full disclosure, the reason why I restarted this production, the Real Deal on, was because of witnessing all the pain that people are experiencing right now, and the confusion. And my successes in my life has been from modeling. So I just thought, well, these are the conversations. Like if you and I were just hanging out, we'd have this conversation anyway. Like this is like just kind of the stuff I ask.
Right.
And the cool thing is now you can be an exemplar, a model for someone who can appreciate, oh, okay, like, I can take this opportunity, this pain that I've got, and choose to use it as fuel to destruct my life or to construct something new, to design a new life with energy. And that's the power of it. So now moving forward, like what's next for you? You talked about your new challenges regarding when you started Success Circles, and now you're having a scaling conversation. Where are you at now, and what is next?
Yeah, great question. So we have an ideal customer. Our ideal customer is someone who's done a lot of growth work, someone who's done Day with Destiny, Business Mastery. They come on board, they get what we're doing. You're in conversation every day, you're making progress, the Kaizen principle, all of that. And so I've been working with these ideal customers and finding communities. We're actually bringing Success Circles into a couple of these communities out there, a couple of other communities that deal with the same customers. And a friend of mine has been challenging me about taking this and building some sort of curriculum and bringing this into the corporate arena, realizing that in companies, given COVID currently, people need more connection. They need an outlet to be authentic and real, and not have things bottled up. And not that we're not therapy. What we do is not therapy at all. Yet there is that opportunity to be heard, be connected, and have a framework that really keeps you lifting, elevating each and every day.
Right.
So so the next challenge or the opportunity for me is taking what we're doing, going into the financial world and the engineering world, perhaps where I used to be in, bringing this as a company, showing the idea of a huddle, and showing people that, before pre-COVID, things were evolving in a way where there were no cubicles, people were able to cross-pollinate and connect. That's no longer available, at least for the short time, for the next 6 months, a year, depending on where things are, what states and how things get worse. However, you can virtually mimic some of that by creating the opportunity for your team to have huddles. And now it's a matter of creating focal points in these huddles to ensure that they're elevating themselves, they're heard, they're able to capture their own why, their own personal why. And ideally that personal why also fits into the bigger company why, mission too, as well. And having that peer conversation, Bloomberg had a article years ago that peer accountability is the ultimate driver of performance. And I believe that versus engaging with a manager, perhaps, like having a peer group where you're expected to show up and play big, adding value. That's the bigger driver of performance, providing people are open to it and so forth.
Love it. Yeah. One of the things I was doing before all this happened, I was at the treatment center and taking it out, was a similar concept. It was a weekly thing, but it was about investing in the staff, in the people, and getting different, like from different parts, different silos, as it were. Unfortunately, some of the companies are more siloed than others, and breaking those down by getting them together weekly and then teaching them to then take that concept. And every day, what we called them, it was just like a morning meeting. We didn't have a clever name for it, but each department would get together in the morning, and that was part of the training, and just kind of set the intention for the day, celebrate the wins of the day before, and get focused on what the outcome is, and just really connect as humans, so that it would take away whatever sort of challenges that may be there because of the lack of connection. So it's great that you're doing this for people, organizations now, are bringing it to them as an opportunity, and hopefully that the companies will, because they're facing a new paradigm. And I don't see, quite honestly, I don't see necessarily things going back. And I hate this term, the new normal, but I think there's going to be a lot of organizations that are going to be happy with the not having an office, not having that overhead, not having so there's going to have to be a new way to continue some connection, because without that, there's going to be a lot of fracturing that occurs. And right now, while it's still new, people are like, they're happy to be at home, and it's okay, and as things start to settle and the novelness of it wears off, other patterns are going to start showing up, and we've got to be proactive about it.
Exactly. Especially around, I'd say, human connection, being heard, it's the ability to move around a bit here once in a while. Yeah. It's all, even schools, of course, also dealing with that too as well. It's a big dilemma. And I think one way to mitigate that is, of course, the huddles, what we're doing. Going back to the model you mentioned before, the work you were doing previously, 12-step, that whole model is brilliant. It's so many people, tens of millions of people have overcome addictions and beyond by getting connected and being related and being heard, and having a sponsor of sorts where they're all peers. That model is brilliant, right? And
I wrote this book, the Under Construction, Navigating the Detours on the Road to Recovery, and I share a little bit. I use Tony's 6 needs model because it's a little more elegant and somewhat agnostic compared to some beliefs around the 12 steps. But you could take the 6 needs and just put it over the 12 step and run those filters, and the 12 steps, when being run appropriately and ecologically, meet the 6 needs for fulfillment. It's not just the 4 for the primary needs, but the spiritual needs are met when actively working the program.
Exactly. And we know that when 4 of those needs are met by anything, it becomes like a must. We find ourselves addiction. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and that's why, I've used that because, as we unpack the hot dog a little bit, when I used it, it was to take the edge off of and the charge around someone's identity, around, and a negative identity around addiction and being an addict per se. When my perspective was, look, everyone's an addict. You just happen to be addicted to drugs or alcohol, and look how this happens. Now let's incorporate the needs of the needs of the spirit. Let's add growth and contribution in here, and let's find new strategies, because drugs and alcohol are just a strategy. Let's find other strategies to help you meet your needs. And a new filter was born.
Yeah.
And it also helped people get out of an addiction to the 12 steps.
Exactly.
Because people also get addicted to that. And there's an illusion of growth if not done ecologically.
Yeah.
So I just love that. It's a very simple and elegant model, and just happened to be in that environment for so long, I couldn't help it.
Of course, yeah. Another way of contextually seeing it, I'm sure you've seen this as well. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but hypnosis. We're all being hypnotized, right? Being hypnotized by the media, being hypnotized by politics, and you can either go down the path of least resistance and watch the television, be hypnotized by media, commercials, and so forth. You see something 7 to 14 times, you're more inclined to buy it or be involved because you see it so often. It's in your vision, peripheral vision, or you hear it or see it or other senses. You can choose to go down go down someone else's path, their choices around you, or you could hypnotize yourself toward making progress. So you're really owning your why each day, and the things you do, the guidedhypnotic.com, and the things you value, we're all being hypnotized. So it's just making that choice. What do I want to be hypnotized toward? And I find environment is a big thing. So our physical environment, our peer group, what we put in our bodies, that all plays a big factor in terms of moving the needle toward the things that we want to be hypnotized toward.
Yep.
And if you know your why, and you can condition yourself each day to own that why each and every day, especially early in the day before resistance starts building up. That's why we do the huddle early in the morning for most of our members. There's an opportunity in there to have a scotoma and break that hypnotic thing, and really choose your own path in your day, kind of creating your day, owning your day, being an owner, and more.
Somewhat of a tangent, but have you read the book, The Hacking of the American Mind?
I haven't, and I will, based on you mentioning it.
Yeah, check it out. The Hacking of the American Mind. It talks about essentially how media and our environment has hypnotized us, and how we've been hacked because of the motivations of, and not to go too nefarious and all that. You could even go into the idea the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Even there, take out intent in some sense. Right. Just notice the patterns and how we fall susceptible, like you just shared. It's just incredible. Like we don't even realize, and I was going to post today, I had a thought, and I'm trying to remember how I languaged it. Something like, do you believe that confirmation bias exists, and does it support or your acceptance or denial of the very bias in which you are confirming?
Got it. Yeah.
Right. Because so interesting, because all these conversations that we have, and when it gets into the hypnotism and where we put our focus and all of that, and the scotomas or the RAS that are happening are all part of the confirmation bias. Seeking you shall find.
Yes.
Asking you shall receive. So if I'm going to find out, if I'm going to start my day and go, what's going to be the worst thing that happens today? We're going to find it. But if I have a huddle in the morning and I'm represented to, hey, what's my purpose? What's my why? What are some successes that I could build on yesterday? If I were to do anything different, what new decision could I make? All of a sudden, new hypnosis occurs and new confirmation bias occurs.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. Early in the day, the better, ideally. And we have a choice how we wire ourselves. I've got a podcast here called Hack Your Focus. So I used to interview these the people who are experts in that area, that arena. And I've always been very passionate about how I could create more time in my day, bend time, for example. And a lot of that is just simply focus, right? Getting people overthink things too much. And it's like breaking that pattern of overthinking things and keeping things very simplistic, So learn a lot. Exactly. Yeah. I've got a kettlebell next to me, and it's there. And sometimes I move it around just to inspire me to to work out. I've got to move it because we go unconscious that it's there.
Actual cannonball, or is it one of those?
No, a kettleball.
Kettleball. I think you said a cannonball.
No, kettleball. Got one of these. Like I got this from Chris Brogan. I think one of the ideas for this is having the things that are important to you near you,
right,
and effectively moving them around so we don't go numb to them. So they're sparking joy continuously. And once again, it's about really your peripheral vision and having things in your focus, your particular field of seeing things, making it simple too. I mean, we're talking about we're presenting all this unique language around, conscious and unconscious, and it's just keeping things very simple. Like, if you want anything in life, keep it in front of you.
Right.
If you want to move there faster, start hanging out with people who will remind you how awesome and great you are. Yep. And be willing each day to be coachable and open, and that you're willing to take small actions toward moving the needle forward. And if you're willing to do that each and every day with some sort of a consistent rhythm, eventually you'll get there. So for some people it's fast, and it might be a few months, it might be a few weeks. For some people it might take years, but as long as you're making progress each day, that's what counts. And progress equals happiness, equals fulfillment, and all of that.
100%. And I believe our philosophy is very similar when it talks about proximity of, surround yourself with people whose normal is what you aspire to. That's what I do. And it has taken my life to incredible places. And one of the challenges with that, and I wonder if you've experienced this, and it's that delicate balance of, when I can speak for myself, when I put myself in an environment where I'm not the most successful, which is, I do it all the time. I make sure that, and the people I hang with are like super successable. Started out with music, right? So I was hanging around all these A-list musicians, and I am not an A-list musician. I do not have the skills. I do not have I didn't put the work in, and I acknowledge that. But some of these guys just seem to have natural talent far above my abilities. I would find myself sometimes feeling like less than, not as accomplished, not as good as, because everyone I hung out with, for the most part, was more talented than I was, which forced me to raise my game. But even me at peak still didn't have me up at their level, but it definitely brought me up. And then same thing, I go on the road with Tony Robbins, I'm modeling. So here I am, Tony's my mentor. He's who I'm comparing myself to. And it's like, for multiple reasons, it's not even a fair comparison. And yet it is on some levels. So what are some of the strategies, the tools, the mindsets that you've used to allow yourself to keep confidence and build confidence without getting into a comparison? Because the only way you could put yourself in an environment with people who are more talented, more successful, more anything to model, you have to compare them enough to be able to say, hey, they have something I want, which means I have to acknowledge I don't have it, which then puts us in this weird thing. I mean, obviously I have my ways that I do it, but I'm just curious, do you experience that? Have you experienced it? And how have you navigated it?
Do, yeah, all the time. And I think a lot of people have experienced that regularly because of social media. They're always comparing themselves to others, Instagram, yep. Facebook. First of all, I tend to avoid all those places where comparison may show up. So I've got a feed eradicator on Facebook, so I'm barely on Facebook or Instagram. I'll have my team kind of work through that too, and I'll get on it at some points. Realizing that everything's made up. Everything in the world we have around us, everything as a construct, it's all completely made up. If someone's idea, even success circles is made up. Everything. Tony even talks about too. He invented himself, who he is as a person, as a leader. He created that, and he's like the tone, and the tone means something to him in terms of his ability to articulate certain things. Kind of owning that, realizing that as we connect with people who are like playing a big game, let's say, or A-listers, as you mentioned them. They may not necessarily have the perfect life. You see what you see on media, and it may occur a certain way, but behind the doors, the relationship might be collapsing or something. So realizing that no one's perfect, recognizing too we're all human. We've got the same blood, like in terms of we're human, we're people. We have, we have the same pain points physically and so forth. And I think those are all things that for me, like really have me break out of comparison. And I used to be, right? I used to compare myself all the time to people quite often. And, it's easy to play small, and it can be an excuse to play small in life. Right. And I believe the bolder we can be, especially as we can stack boldness each day, eventually who you see yourself to be will start shifting too as well. Your identity starts shifting too as well. And we've got to do our own work too sometimes. And I used to go back in days, like talk to myself in the mirror, for example, do, like, I love you, like eye contact with myself. I did that work for some time. Eventually you do it enough times where you don't need that anymore. Meditation may not be as critical. It's still useful. It's effective to kind of minimize the 60,000 thoughts we have in our head ongoingly throughout the day, but it may not be as essential as it used to be. So it's just applying those strategies, priming our minds, recognizing it's all made up, minimizing the distractions like social media. Like, I haven't watched TV in years. Post 9/11, what got me on the brink of depression, where I was prescribed prescriptions around mental health, like antidepressants, and I've never taken any, but I was, because my focus was just that. Like 9/11, all the challenges happening on the world. I also lived by the towers as well.
Mm-hmm.
I lived just about half a mile away in Jersey City by Exchange Place. And it's just protecting your focus, all of us protecting our field of focus, and ensuring that we're not allowing ourselves to be distracted by the media and how the world looks. Recognizing it's all made up. Everything's made up completely. And it's up to you to kind of create your own game, your own world, and the choices you want to make. And go ahead and build something, right? Try something out, see if it sticks, get feedback ongoingly from people who are like a step or two ahead of you, and you'll get there.
Yep. Yeah. Amen. I mean, for me, very similar. And the other thing I've consciously done is be sure that the people I'm surrounding myself with are also grounded, ecological, that it's more than just a certain thing that I'm looking at modeling. It's a much bigger picture, and that they're not sitting there judging either. Like, there's no, their mindset is support. Oh, how can I help you? Oh, this is great. And I can ask questions, and, so I can have conversations like this, because then I go, oh, okay, cool. And we come from the human and spiritual aspect instead of just the material aspect, just the accomplishments, but more of meaning the material accomplishments as opposed to the spiritual accomplishments and what's so much bigger. Yeah. Which is also what I love about you, and I appreciate what you're doing is creating a space for people to have that experience, that holistic experience, to have access to multiple models and have that momentum built into the process, as opposed to them having to go out and generate it, which they will as they continue to grow, but also have like a fuel tank basically every day to kind of go and get some extra energy from.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, you've got the ability to bring the best out in people. That's part of one of your gifts that you have. It's very clear. And I think for some people out there, the A-listers, for example, part of their survival mechanism may be just winning. Mm-hmm. Right? That whole mechanism, and why they're generating revenue or all the things. And to break that pattern, whether their game is always winning, they're going unconscious to other areas of their life. It takes something, and it takes, I think, the ability to listen to people. One of the things that we don't talk about with success circles is on these huddles, you get very masterful listening, active listening, empathic listening, being able to hear the unheard, hear the intentions behind what people are saying, all the things you're masterful at. And I think as we get better at listening to others, we get better at listening to ourselves too, realizing that we're all the same. We're all connected. We're all mirrors of each other. My wife and I are the same. And the more in partnership we are, the more we realize that we're mirrors of each other in every way. And when you're able to recognize that, the walls drop and you realize that anything's possible because it's all made up.
And so, like, let's take that to another level. How are you noticing that with your children? Are you noticing the patterns that they're picking up?
It's amazing with the kids, and I see their patterns. I see that. And it's also healing too. Yep. I see them making choices, and my daughter, my son, I see them noticing things. I'm like, oh, as a kid, that happened to me too, right? And I could see how kids make up stories all the time and what this means. And of course, we do our best to mitigate those things and to really show them how loved they are. Yep. I think having
age is ours, right? She's what, 5 or 6 now?
She'll be 5 this month.
Yeah.
So it's just being in her eyes, like seeing her make up these things, and it's very healing for us. It's also healing if we catch these things for her as well. Also, just a reminder that it's like all these lessons we learn in growth work, and not to make up stories and all of that. But having a child's amazingly healing. Even my niece, when she was born, like I took care of her a lot. My sister's a single mom, and And it's no accident I started Success Circles 2 months after my niece was born. I just saw the opportunity of one day being a dad myself.
Yeah.
I had a compelling future for myself. And just seeing her journey over the years, it just provided a lot of healing, because you see, our parents never had, there was no book on how to raise their kids, right? There's none of that. I watched, from the age I was like 6, I was watching soap operas, General Hospital, All My Children, Edge of Life, because we had people in our household learning English by watching like Three's Company and all these soap operas. And by the time I was like 10 or 11, I was watching these things, and that became part of my life eventually. And you kind of wire yourself, you're hypnotized through like, well, is this real? And, it takes something to break out of that, yeah, I mean, soap opera, people like soap operas. Soap operas are fine. I'm sure they provide something. It's easy to go through life and create that over and over again, thinking that that's the reality. So we don't watch too much TV in our household. If we do something, it's something playful. It's enjoyable. Something where there are lessons involved. That's what's there.
I've been, I don't watch a whole lot, but what I have like at night just to kind of zone out, Logo or Me TV here has got, like I've been recording them and catching them at the middle of the night. Happy Days, Three's Company last night, Laverne and Shirley. And just, it's funny, you look back at these shows and I know part of it is just reminiscing, cause just going back like, it was a more innocent time growing up, but also most of those shows had a message.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Especially like Facts of Life and stuff like that, or, there was always some message and now, not that I don't watch really anything now, so it's not fair to say, but like even the stuff that Ellie's watching there's not really a whole lot of messaging.
Right.
Like there's no lesson.
Right.
When you're done, you don't go, oh, I see how that applies in my life. It's like, interesting.
I agree. I think there are also a lot more distraction points too. Like also, so like our daughter watches TV and she watches, I think it's called Blues Cruise. I think it's called.
Blues?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She watches that, but it's like the show ends and it goes to the next show. And it's like we have Amazon Prime, so it goes to, and we have Netflix, so it like goes to the next show. So there's no moment to pause, absorb the lesson, to talk to mommy and daddy. Back in days, you had commercials, or it's dinner time afterwards to kind of engage and kind of absorb those lessons. So I think a lot of the shows do have lessons. It's just a matter of
I was thinking some of the other she watches Daniel Tiger and
Daniel Tiger's great.
Great. She has older friends, so now she's watching the show Sam and Cat. It's a rerun that she's watching. I think only for 2 seasons, and it's Ariana Grande. The show, I guess it was the show that got her start. And there's nothing in it. It's vapid, and I feel bad that this is. I mean, she's cute because she's like modeling the voices, and like Ellie's going to be an actress, I'm sure, of some entertainer. She just loves she will. She's even like using devices in her voice, and when she sings, she like goes rah, like she's really animated.
Well, she gets that from you, of course, because you're passionate about it.
Yeah, between the two of us, yeah. But interesting how you started. So I'll share this one story, and we can start wrapping up. The other day it's maybe a month ago. We limit her use of the iPad. Yeah, and it's like, okay, it's time up. And she freaked out. She was like, not having it, and had a bit of a fit. And she started getting angry and throwing stuff. And I'm like, well, this is exactly why we've got to like limit your time. You clearly have an unhealthy relationship with the iPad. And so she calms down a little bit, and she comes in after about 20 minutes. Everything's fine. She's calm. She's like, Daddy, I feel better about the iPad now. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, I'm not mad anymore. I was like, oh, okay. That's good. She goes, you want to know what I did? And I was like, well, yeah, tell me. Well, I just imagined I had my iPad. So I just sat down and I sang all the songs and watched the videos in my head that I wanted to watch. So I felt better. And it's like, wow, like you're figuring out state management and understanding that you can create your world and you don't need this outside stuff. And imagine what else you can create. You created something you're familiar with, and yet you could also create something brand new.
Brilliant.
You would know
Yeah.
the difference. And I was like, okay, we're,
Yeah.
we've been leaving clues for her,
It's
hopefully.
awesome. I think it's great. The lessons that they have early in life that becomes who they are later in life, especially these key years, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like it's like those lessons, and we're not sure as far as the fall goes with our daughter, who's the same age as yours, how we'll proceed. She was in a Montessori program which encourages focus and concentration. We're not sure how that'll proceed going forward with everything going on, but we want to. I'm committed to focus. I'm committed that we're all like having these awesome lives, and that these key cornerstone years, are productive and awesome for her. Right? She's able to. Yeah.
So I know that obviously Trump had said we want schools open, and we have the same thing. Our daughter goes to Montessori, and same thing. What is your plan B?
Plan B. So we have got some great babysitters on care who happen to be teachers.
Oh.
So we had one who was a 6th grade teacher for 3 months. It was amazing. So she had some connection with that. We had a play date with one of her friends from Montessori school. That's kind of plan B, and maybe have some connections where they're able to meet in person. We're not sure about school. I mean, one of the issues with schools is that when our daughter would go, like she'd come home and we'd get sick, or my son would get sick too as well. It's like kids carry they're not intentional about coughing, but just so happens that they got a little bit of a germ here, a germ there, and it's like the whole family's sick now. And it's like, and you and I are very health conscious, right? My green drink here, and so we're just being present to that and planning accordingly, and maybe making choices where she's able to connect, which connections are really important. I'm curious what the schools are going to present. I really am. And then also there's this thing too, like we're now like with the school system, maybe having technology could be a good thing, given that because the school she was part of it was anti-tech. Mm-hmm. And now given that new state of things, she has to keep learning. She has to keep evolving. Right. Yep. And so it's I think it's having those conversations, like maybe you and I having a conversation like right now in this moment, or talking to other parents too, and coming to greater awareness in talking to people and figuring out a solution given all these variables. I think that's probably something will come forth. That's a mixture of all worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the hybrid is going to be the way it goes. I think that the challenge with that is measuring where someone is at. It's easier when they're right there. The teacher can kind of be there and say, oh, okay, I see where you're progressing. Here's where some challenges. They have some more professional kind of mindset around it and experience. Whereas parents, especially, I mean, we're in a little different position where we work from home, but I can imagine people who, have to go to work, or, they are working from home and they're unable to kind of allocate time. Like, how do we create a system that the children are getting? I mean, these are formative years, are getting the attention and the modification. Again, we look at school, and the good and the bad out of this, I guess, opportunity is to look at it, because the old way of school was designed for the industrial age, and we all know that, but they haven't changed it a whole lot. Now that we're even progressing past the information age, like, how do we best prepare our children for the new world in the way things are done, the way things communicate, the way business is done, the way we contribute, the way, so we certainly need to incorporate technology, but it's quite a fascinating conversation about like what's next, because, politics aside, I think one could pretty much say without any sort of partisanship that maybe this could have been handled a little bit differently. Yes. And like, so are we reacting again now that the school, because there was no plan in the first place, and now we're scrambling for a reactive plan because school is coming up and no one's making a decision anyway. So it's really, we need a next level bit of leadership coming up here.
Agreed. Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean our own leadership, not about who's leading. Just humans in general need to step up as leaders for their families more now than ever before.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to be resourceful, and not everyone out there is as resourceful as you are, as I am. And it can be a hybrid solution of sorts. But it's not just, our kids, it's also like hundreds of millions of children out there dealing with this, in the system. And you want to protect their focus. You want to ensure they're making good decisions, that they're being empowered to. You've got, the whole nature of, and I hate to go down this path, like later on in this conversation, but like one ill thought can lead into like a child or an adult making a mistake, going to a school and doing stupid things, hurting people. And once again, it's about focusing, really focusing on evolving, being better as people, being more conscious, being more present as leaders of tomorrow. This is going to have a toll. And even if you go back to school and things open up and then people get sick again, it's the fall season and flu season evolves. And does this person have the actual flu, or does this person have COVID? Like all those conversations that'll come out of that. We just have to like be willing to be, all of us as parents, be extraordinary leaders to step up. And it does take having good role models. So if you have a solution around that in the future, if you find a great site or something about sort, please tell me, because I want to learn. I really do.
We're always looking, and we're considering all sorts of options. We were underwhelmed with the process that her last few months of school were.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
So we're like, oh, this is what it's going to be. We're going to have to figure something else out, because this ain't going to work. Like this is, and hearing from it's not unique. I think no one was prepared for it unless you were already homeschooling and already had a system. There people are like, I don't know what to do. Like, I think our school actually did Google Montessori lessons and say, here, watch this video. Like,
yep, exactly.
Well, we could do that. Like that.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it'll be a hybrid. I might ask my sister. My sister homeschooled her son for a bit of time, so I might ask her what she's done, and it's like a hybrid solution. And I trust that we will get through this. I know we talked about some crazy things recently. I trust that we live in the greatest country in the whole world, I believe, in terms of resourceful and freedom and so forth. We just celebrated the 4th of July recently. I trust that as a nation we'll come and make better decisions going forward, and we'll create some sort of standard, and we'll learn from it, especially given the whole world is flat and we're able to learn so effectively with technology and blogs and things of that sort. It's just being open to it and not letting our egos get in the way. I think that's a big part of it.
And I'll leave with this thought. My experience from all this, I've watched people double down on whatever provides them with certainty, because we have so much, and just because they're certain about it doesn't mean it's supporting them. And there's a lot of that going on both sides. I think it's where we're seeing the divide. People are just doubling down on their environment that they feel certain in, and without picking sides. It's just looking at it from the outside going, oh my gosh, like everybody who has no certainty is doing everything they can and surrounding themselves with people who agree with them so they can have more certainty, because they're freaking out and they don't know what to do.
Exactly.
And what we do need is that guiding light to expose and people to start coming a little more into the gray area of possibility. And again, that's why, I ask you to be part of this, because you're living more in the gray area, giving people the opportunity to create their own certainty as part of a community that are willing to question things, that are willing to hold each other to higher standards, willing to create certainty where there is none, in a way that is positive and supportive, as opposed to negative and destructive. So thank you on behalf of the universe, on behalf of God, on behalf of everyone you touch, for what you're doing.
Thank you for playing your part too with this, Doug, with everything you're doing too as well. And it's up to people like us to carry the torches, right? Inspire others as leaders, and invite all of us to be leaders of tomorrow too as well. And it's not difficult. It's just shifting focus and like breaking out of the spell that most of us are in.
Amen. So if people want to get in touch with you, want to learn more about Success Circles, or try out some of your free resources, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, easy. So thanks for asking me that question. Successcircles.com, easy. We have free huddles. So this is called a Momentum Group Huddle every day, 12:30 Eastern. We do that. It's a lot of fun. We celebrate our wins from Q1 of a day to Q2. share our intentions, our bold actions for the day. We have a group huddle on the weekend on Saturday. If you go to momentum.buzz, you can learn about that too as well. The link's on top of the page. If you want to contact me, just follow the contact form on successcircles.com. You can reach out to me. I'm accessible. This is all about all of us growing together. So any way I can help you or serve your audience, anyone watching this, realize that that there are people like Doug and myself and powered teams and communities that are accessible. We just have this unique process with our huddles. I think the huddle is a great way organizations to begin thriving at a whole new level, building connection, our ability to listen. I think the biggest thing I've learned in life throughout all of this with what we're dealing with is our ability to listen. So I'll leave it at that, just successcircles.com. And I invite all of us to be able to listen more intently to each other.
Amen, brother.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Love you for who you are and who you aren't. Love to your family. And we look forward to connecting even more and supporting the growth here for people in general.
Awesome, my brother. Thank you so much. Awesome time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace, man. We'll talk soon.
Drop.
Thanks, brother.